It is Christian nationalism.
So you see, I also call myself a Christian nationalist. And that's not a bad word.
Wash your mouth out with soap.
Your dirty mouth needs a bath.
God will make you pay. Smite them.
Okay, we've got a very interesting series of articles here that paint an interesting narrative, Gons, and we're going to go through it and see if we can sort of piece this together, because we had a really fun time connecting the dots on this. And let's see if we can do it without belaboring it too much. This, again, is coming from The Intercept.
You love The Intercept.
They have been a very fascinating, much like how we watched CNN go through their shift starting about a year ago. Mm-hmm. The Intercept is similarly going through a shift. So I am fascinated with what's happening over there. This Intercept article is headlined, "Midterms Will Determine Republicans' Stance on Ukraine and America."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, interesting, right? So the midterms, the actual elections themselves, will determine Republicans' stance on Ukraine.
Oh, so
not the other way around.
This is also
not the stance determining the midterms.
So this is also Russia, Ukraine.
Russia.
Fight for Ukraine. New world order.
Nuke.
And it goes a little something like this. The central question looming over the 2022 midterm elections is whether the Republican Party is morphing into a fascistic organization that wants to end the messy business of elections, voting, and democracy, and create a right-wing autocracy instead. Did you know this?
No, I thought that's what the right wing accuses the left wing of doing.
Isn't that interesting? The central question. I mean, it's one thing to say, like, this is something that's happening or worrying Democrats or something. But no, the central question is the Republican Party morphing into a fascistic organization that wants to end elections, voting, and democracy and create a right-wing autocracy instead? Ever since, you guessed it, Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, culminating in the January 6th insurrection, and followed by Republican efforts to downplay the coup attempt, it has become increasingly difficult to tell the difference between the Republican mainstream and the party's extremist fringe.
Oh boy. Wow.
Yikes.
You got a problem if you cannot do that.
Increasingly difficult. Well, to some degree, they are right. It is increasingly difficult. But the reasons for that we might disagree on.
Yeah.
I would say it is increasingly difficult to tell the difference between the Republican mainstream and the party's extremist fringe because the narrative being crafted by the magicians of media are exclusively focusing on a small, obscure portion of the Republican Party, if you could even be so directed to label it that way. What it really is just some fringy people talking about building a right-wing autocracy. And they are a group that we've been talking about recently, and we'll get into that in a second. But okay, this is the premise of the article. If the Republicans prevail and gain control of Congress, one of the first tests of their true intentions will come when they must decide whether to support continued U.S. military aid to Ukraine in its defense against this year's brutal Russian invasion. So that is the first test of their true intentions. Remember, their intentions, according to this article, are to create a right-wing autocracy. To do away with democracy. And the first test of that intention is, do they vote for or against military aid to Ukraine? What a fascinating narrative they are creating over here. In a Republican-controlled Congress, votes on aid to Ukraine are likely to reveal a sharp divide between traditional hawkish Republicans who oppose the Russian invasion and have supported the Biden administration's military aid to Ukraine.
Okay, that's one group.
So rhinos, basically.
Rhinos.
And the new and growing faction of the Christian evangelical movement known as Christian nationalists, many of whom admire Russian dictator Vladimir Putin.
Admire?
And
Do they have? Does he have any proof of that, or?
And want to cut off American support to Ukraine. Votes on Ukraine. Here it is. Votes on Ukraine will serve as a barometer of whether traditional Republicans still have any influence and whether they have the will to stand up to the rise of extremism within their ranks. So, to be an anti-war Republican is to be a Christian nationalist extremist. It's extreme to not send billions of dollars to Ukraine. That's the extremist position.
Yeah.
Christian nationalists represent a frightening dynamic within the Republican Party. They are theocrats who don't believe in the separation of church and state and who argue that the United States was founded as a Christian nation and needs to return to those origins. They despise Western secularist culture. Keep that in mind as we move. These Christian nationalists despise Western secularist culture, fear white demographic decline, and deeply resent feminism, homosexuality, and abortion rights, and even individualism.
That's the whole Dugan thing we covered. Was it last episode?
Exactly. That is another essential part of this breakdown we are going to be looking at. So again, Christian nationalists despise Western culture and also despise individualism, which they see as a modern concept that at odds with a more traditional hierarchical society. Now, when you think of communalism and individualism, I mean, those are core tenets core opposing tenets of, what you would traditionally think of as Republican and liberal, conservative and liberal. So conservatives are more about the individual, where liberals are more about the community, right? The collective. But in this case, they're saying Christian nationalists are against a core conservative value of individualism. Where are they getting this? I have no idea. They're just sort of saying it in this article without any.
I was going to say, he's making a lot of claims here.
Not a single source yet. Not a single source. Not a single link. Not a single, piece of evidence to back up what he's saying, because there is no evidence. It's just it's a narrative crafting social engineering project.
Yeah.
So let's continue. Christian nationalists now dominate the extreme right of the Republican Party, and they have come to believe that Putin is a warrior for Christian fundamentalism, and that his invasion of Ukraine is one step in his campaign to crush the global woke left. So, Christian nationalists love Putin. They hate individualism, they hate Western culture, and they love Putin. Is this not already the most absolutely insane theory that you have ever heard?
I'm only surprised that they, because in the last few years of the Russia tensions leading up to this last year with the war and everything, but just, in the context of Trump and he's a Russian spy and all this kind of stuff.
It's been a long project.
It's been a long project. And it's always the sort of logical outcome was exactly what this guy is saying here. Like, we're going to, because the conservatives, right wing, they've been saying that, hey, you're going to just lump us into this thing and accuse us of being complicit to Russian desires. That's been the accusation all along. So there's nothing new there.
Putin's puppet.
You're right.
Putin's puppet, all this stuff.
But to have this other variable come in of Christian nationalism, a highly charged topic, a religious topic, and spiritual overtones and undertones, and Putin and his
threat, the biggest threat.
The biggest threat. Yeah.
Christian nationalism was called the biggest threat to American democracy.
And we've seen Putin and Medvedev and all these guys in Russia make it a religious war against the West.
Yes.
They have called it that. The satanic West. We need to get rid of it. We need all this stuff. So very interesting.
Putin's framing of the war as a religious one. There was the loss of the religious, the piece of Christ's cross that was lost on a sunk Russian boat. There was, over and over, Putin has, or at least the U.S. media has represented Putin as making this a religious war.
And this is provoking. I think this is meant to just poke everybody who's neutral. Maybe they're religious, but especially Christians who are just like
polarized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're I think you and I have always tried to be at that neutral, like, hey, we're trying to be logical and approach this with a little bit of a different perspective, but it's almost like, no, nobody gets to sit out this fight. Everybody is getting pulled in. And this is one way to just declare it on a media piece here.
And even if you are, even if you're not neutral, but you have complex views, regarding funding Ukraine, balancing interests, things like this.
Yeah.
No. If you don't want to keep sending taxpayer dollars to Ukraine, you are a Christian nationalist who loves Putin. And
that's wrong. It's bad and it's wrong. Yes.
Not only is it bad and wrong, but it's the biggest threat to democracy. It goes on. Christian nationalists, just to give you some flavor, the whole thing is like this, and there's really not really any
substance
or facts or anything. They have a couple of quotes, but let me give you this paragraph. Christian nationalists see Putin as the leader in a powerful right-wing counterattack against liberal secularism and as a protector of their Christian faith. You can tell whoever wrote this doesn't understand that Orthodox Christianity, evangelical Christianity,
Roman Catholicism,
Roman Catholicism, they're all different things that don't agree with each other. That's how you can tell this is a secularist who knows literally nothing about the Christian faith. Putin has encouraged this support from Christian nationalists in the United States and other Western nations by co-opting the Russian Orthodox Church and waging a culture war inside Russia, notably with anti-gay and other supposedly pro-family measures. Something, by the way, he's been doing for 20 years. Yeah. But okay, now it's specifically, aimed for Christian nationalists. Now, many in the Christian nationalist wing of the Republican Party openly want Putin to crush Ukraine's pro-Western government and win the war. They've gone from Christian nationalists,
preserve the nation to
they prefer for Russia to win the war. I mean, up until this point, they're sort of just saying like, oh, because they don't want to fund Ukraine, then ex facto they want Russia to win. It's sort of implied that Christian nationalists want Putin to win, but maybe not directly, but just because they don't want to fund Ukraine. If you don't want to fund Ukraine, then you must love Putin. No. Here they just say it outright. Christian nationalists, wing of the Republican Party, openly want Putin to crush Ukraine's pro-Western government and win the war. They willingly accept Russian disinformation and often parrot Moscow's lies about Ukraine. That's an annoying one because, not even worth going in.
Triggering.
A lot in there. Now, this was interesting. I didn't know this, but Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the loudest voices of Christian nationalism. That's why she's in our jingle in Congress, and one of the few who doesn't shy away from the term in public. Earlier this year, she spoke at an event held by a white nationalist group where many in the crowd chanted, "Putin, Putin."
Do we got tape? We got audio, tape?
Right. So there is a link to this spoke at an event
Okay. Take a
thing.
look.
And it's from AP. It's from March 1st of this year. GOP
Putin
torn
chants. Okay.
as Green speaks to far right amid Putin chants. And it is a big block of text, and I am not seeing a video anywhere. I would love, maybe you can just do a general search. Can you do Marjorie Taylor Greene, Putin chant or something and see if anything comes up?
You continue reading this thing and all
I
that.
will.
Yeah.
I will. Last week, Green told a rally in Iowa that Congress would cut off funding for Ukraine if Republicans gain control. Quote, under Republicans, not another penny will go to Ukraine. And this is where I think The Intercept and the whole narrative is making a huge mistake, because we saw this with COVID as well. They tried to turn one group of people, a group of people with an ideology. They single out the idea. It's not even an ideology. They single out the opinion. During COVID, it was COVID mandates. There shouldn't be vaccine mandates. Take that. It's just an opinion that Democrats and Republicans and independents, individual human beings, had different opinions on COVID mandates. And I know personally a lot of liberal people who are very against vaccine mandates. Well, they went on the news and over and over for a year and a half, said if you don't support vaccine mandates, you're a right-wing, white supremacist, extremist, domestic terrorist. And it really alienated Democrats who didn't think there should be mandates. And a lot of those Democrats stopped being Democrats, specifically because they were alienated by their party. And in the same way, they are really at danger of doing the same thing, because they're quoting Marjorie Taylor Greene, under Republicans, not another penny will go to Ukraine. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You can not agree with the unlimited funding and provocation that goes along with that of the Ukraine war. I think they're at risk. They are repeating the mistakes of the COVID pandemic, and I don't think it's going to work out for Democrats. But so to summarize, and it goes on, it has more quotes taken out of context from other Republicans, and it has more sort of strange reasoning as to why Christian nationalists want Ukraine to fail. They talk about Tucker Carlson. They talk about Kevin McCarthy. They talk about everybody. OK, but the long and short of it is, if you're a Christian nationalist, you hate the West, you want Putin to win, and whatever the last point was. What was it? Shoot.
They want an autocracy.
Yeah, that's definitely in there. But it's this direct connection between Russia, Putin specifically, Christian nationalists. Okay, now let's go to this next article.
Did you want to do the Putin chant thing? I think I found it. I think it was Nick Fuentes.
You find it? Let's hear it. Did you find it?
Oh, are you there? Did I lose you? I think I lost Basil.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, you're there.
You hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Okay.
Did you find the video?
I think so. Let me just. Okay. I was doing it from captions, so we'll see. But here we go. Let's see if. Okay, what did Nick Fuentes say? Hold on.
Is our strength, And I look at China and I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia? Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so
I need more context.
Okay.
What is that?
It's Nick Fuentes at an event with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the AFPAC from back in February. Okay. And yeah, all right. So he says a round of applause for Russia as a contrast to what China's doing. And
which is weird. If it's in February, that depending on when in February that was, do you have an exact date in February?
This is 8 months ago. YouTube, February 28th, 4 days after the war broke out.
4 days after the war.
Nick Fuentes on stage at AFPAC.
And I want to know what he said that they started cheering Putin for.
Let me pull back.
There's not,
I can pull back a little more because he's
okay.
They give him quite a bit of runway leading up to the Putin chant. So here, let's just do it. Might as well spend the time to do it. I found it here. So
And our secret sauce here, it's these young white men.
Oh boy.
That's what we call the secret ingredient. America and the world has forgotten about them, but not us. You know, they say about America, they say diversity is our strength, you know. And I look at China and I look at Russia. Can we give a round of applause for Russia?
What does China have to do with that?
They're not white. And by the way, I wanted to point out.
Okay.
I just want to point out that the actual people yelling Putin sounds like maybe 3-4 guys in the front row or something. Like it's not. It's not
great optics on whatever that thing was.
No,
that certainly is not
great. That whatever Nick Fuentes is doing up here is pretty ridiculous. But aside from that, just for the Intercept, you know, their reporting makes it sound like a crowd, a stadium full of Putin chanters. But I mean, really, it's just like 5 guys or something.
But again, there's this idea that this is the majority of the Republican movement. Yeah. And look, we have to say it every time. We actually, by the way, have been mainly critical of the Christian nationalist idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say it again. I understand it's natural to want your government to agree with your religious views.
Reflect on the values.
But Christian nationalism is basically almost explicitly unbiblical, an unbiblical stance.
Yeah.
But that's for, we've talked about that many times. Yeah. So that is a crazy clip.
That's a crazy clip, yeah.
Yeah. So where was I? So these Christian nationalists, of which you cannot tell how much of them are standard Republicans or how much of them is the fringe. The line is blending. This is representing the majority of Republicans.
Yeah.
And that minority, of which I don't deny that there may be a small extreme fringe, but it is a minority. And for it to be, characterized as the main characterization of republicanism just isn't true, is the thing. I mean, I don't know. I think the fact that clip surprises us so much is, speaks to how rare that type of explicit Christian nationalism pops up.
Yeah. So
to say that it's indistinguishable from the rest of the Republican Party is just simply not true.
Yeah.
So Christian nationalism hates the West, loves Putin, wants Russia to win the war, wants a theocracy. Okay. Now let's jump over to Al Jazeera real quick.
Okay.
Because of course, included in this group, implicitly in this article, but explicitly in other articles, this group is synonymous with conspiracy theorists, and conspiracy theorists, if you're any sort of skeptic of a mainstream narrative, you are called a conspiracy theorist. And conspiracy theorists, thanks to the messaging, is synonymous with, Christian nationalist right-wing extremism.